Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest challenges facing the world's fastest-growing major economy, India's high-stakes race to lock down its energy future and protect its industry from a world that just keeps getting more complicated. So let's just start with this quote from the Hindustan Times because it absolutely nails the problem. In our world, something that happens thousands of miles away doesn't stay there. It sends ripples right through India's economy, all the way down to the factory floor. To really get why India is pushing so hard and so fast for a green energy revolution, you first have to understand just how vulnerable it is to these global shocks. This isn't just about climate, it's about survival. And this number? It says it all, really. India has to import nearly 90% of its crude oil. Think about that. This kind of dependency means its entire economy is walking on a tightrope, super sensitive to price spikes and supply cuts that are, let's be honest, becoming the new normal. And here's where the geography gets really dicey. Over half of India's energy imports have to squeeze through this one narrow shipping lane. So when tensions flare up in that region, this tiny strait suddenly becomes a huge strategic headache. So what about a backup plan? A safety net? Well, this is it. And it's not great. India's strategic reserves can cover the country for just about 9.5 days. The international recommendation is 90 days. That's barely any cushion at all. The economic hit from all this could be massive. Moody's Analytics figured that a long, drawn-out spike in energy prices, say from a war, could wipe out a painful 4% of India's economic output. That's not just a number on a spreadsheet. That's a huge blow to jobs, to growth, to stability. Okay, so faced with these really undeniable risks, India is not just sitting around waiting for the next crisis. It's making a massive strategic bet on a cleaner and, crucially, a homegrown energy future. It's trying to cut the cord connecting its growth to global chaos. And the absolute heart of this new strategy is the National Green Hydrogen Mission. And let's be really clear here. This is about so much more than just hitting climate targets. This is about building a new foundation for India's economic and national security.
So, what is this stuff anyway? Green hydrogen? Well, in simple terms, you use clean electricity from solar and wind to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. What you get is a really powerful, totally clean fuel. And it's a game changer for industries that are tough to clean up, like steel manufacturing, fertilizers, and even shipping.
And this is what that strategy looks like in the real world. This isn't just a plan on paper. The government is actively turning major ports into these all-in-one green hydrogen hubs, places to make it, use it, and eventually sell it to the world. It's about turning an old vulnerability into a new strength. And the scale of what they're trying to do here is just wow. The ambition is breathtaking. These goals are meant to be totally transformative. We're talking about huge investment, hundreds of thousands of new jobs, and massive cuts to both import bills and carbon emissions. But, with any grand vision, there's always a reality check. Having a bold plan is one thing. Having the actual pipes and wires to make it work is a whole other story. Which brings us to this massive question. India is a world beater when it comes to installing new solar panels and wind turbines. But can the country's electrical grid, the transmission network, actually handle all this new clean power? And while the data here is pretty sobering. Last year, the country built just over half the transmission lines it was supposed to. That's a 42% shortfall, a huge gap between making the power and actually being able to move it to where people need it. So what's the direct result of that gap? It's this. Over 50 gigawatts of brand new, ready-to-go renewable energy capacity is basically stranded. The power plants are built, but they can't get the electricity onto the grid because of these bottlenecks. But the grid isn't the only challenge here. This whole green transition is creating a new strategic problem, one that looks kind of familiar. It makes you wonder, is India just swapping one dependency for another? This is what some people are starting to call the critical mineral trap. To build all the batteries we need for electric cars and for storing energy on the grid, India is almost completely dependent on importing minerals like lithium and cobalt. So the risk is you just shift from relying on oil from the Middle East to relying on critical minerals processed in just one or two other countries. So with all these pretty big hurdles, how does India actually navigate this? How does it build a future that's genuinely secure, resilient, and sustainable? Well, the path forward seems to be this comprehensive four-part strategy. First, you've got to fix the grid, urgently. That means tons of investment in transmission lines and battery storage. Second, you have to get ahead of the mineral problem and build diverse supply chains. Third, double down on game-changing tech like green hydrogen. And finally, and this is so important, make sure the small and medium-sized businesses, the real backbone of the economy, get the support they need to make this transition.
And this quote really brings us full circle. It perfectly captures the new wave thinking about energy security. You know, going green and being strong aren't separate goals anymore. They're two sides of the very same coin. The best way to build a strong industrial base is to build a clean one.
Which leaves us with one final, urgent thought. India is in a race against time here. The stakes for its people, for its economy, and for its industrial future could not be higher. The question isn't whether it has the right vision. The question is, in a world of escalating energy wars, can it build that future fast enough?